All of the DJE handwovens kits come with a pre-measured warp chain for your convenience. So all you have to do is take it out of the bag and go right to your loom and start warping and start weaving. Now as you take the warp chain out of the bag, you'll notice on one end there is a ribbon. This ribbon is the way that we keep the warp chain together. So you just remove that and the warp chain comes apart. And you'll notice also that there are two papers here, one on each side of the cross. The cross is secured with what I call a counting thread, and this counting thread holds together the warp cross, but it also holds the cross together in increments of 1 inch worth of warp threads for your convenience. So with the papers, you're just going to insert your hand into the space that is created by the papers. So now you're in between the two layers of the warp threads in the easiest way possible. Once you have your hand in here, remove these papers and just toss them away. Now, as you can see, I've already started warping this loom. I've measured out from the center to half of the distance of the entire warp, and I've started threading into the first slot at the edge of what will be my weaving project. First we're going to thread all of the slots, then you'll advance the warp onto the back beam, and once you get it to about in this area, you'll cut the end, and then you will pull out one thread from each of the two in a slot and thread that thread into the hole next to it. Now we have our warp chain, and you can see right here there's the counting thread that's holding the warp chain ends into 1 inch increments. So each of these sections of the warp chain hold 1 inch worth of warp threads. I like to use a small number 9 crochet hook to help me with this step in the process. But you can see that one of the warp threads is on top, and I'm just going to hook onto that warp thread, find that end center point or close to it, put my crochet hook through the slot, hook the loop on, pull it through, and because I have a loom where the apron ties, rod ties, are removable, I can just slip this warp loop onto the apron rod and it's all secure. Go back to my warp bundle, take another set of 2 threads, thread them through the heddle, the slot, hook them on to the apron rod, and we're off and running. And then when I get to the next place where the apron rod tie is, I can just keep on threading, and I get there and I put that apron tie back on it. Now there are some looms out there that have their apron rod ties are permanently attached to the apron rod. And next we are going to look at several methods that you can use to attach your warp to an apron rod that does not have the removable ties. Okay, you can see it probably better at this angle that I have taken a couple of rulers and just taken a little painter's tape and created a little support for my apron rod so it's not flopping about as you're working on it. On all of your warps there is a choke tie down further on the warp, and what you can do is you can pull out all the slack and use that choke tie as a measuring so that you're working with the center back of your warp. Now there's several ways that you can attach this to your back apron rod. The first one is using a lashing cord. A lashing cord is just a heavy cotton cord, which I don't advise using nylon because it's slippery, but a good stout cotton cord that you can get at any shop in your town. Tie it onto that back apron rod, just on one end. Then you're going to take this butterfly, which is the other part of the lashing cord, just put that butterfly right through the opening loop in your warp threads, down and around the apron rod. Then I would take the next 4, put my butterfly through, down and around the apron rod. And that will secure very, very well those warp threads. Now, another method you can use is called the shoelace method. The shoelace method was developed by Nadine Sanders, and it takes a shoelace, literally, and you just take the middle point of the shoelace, fold it over, take the folded end under the apron rod, the loose ends go through the loop, and you just have this nice little slip knot around your apron rod. Take one side of your shoelace and go through the loop. Take the other side of the shoelace, go through the loop, and then you're just going to tie those two ends together, just like that first knot that you do with your shoelaces in the morning. And then when you pull on the warp, everything pulls tight and it's nice and secure. You can also use this method to tie onto the apron rod in the front when you get to that point. However, at that point you will have cut the warp thread, so you will have to do an overhand knot in each of the bundles that you're going to be tying on. The last method, it requires no extra equipment whatsoever, and it's a simple overhand knot method. You take the loops of your warp, find that end again, so it's the centered end. You're going to just take the end and do a simple overhand knot, and then just pull it down so it's, at the end of that loop. So you've got your overhand knot. Then just take those knotted warp ends, go around your apron rod. Once again, just do once around, like tying your shoes, pull it tight, and then pull it, and you can see that this little knot acts as a stopper, and it's held very securely. So those are the methods that you can use to get one of the DJE Handwovens warps onto your rigid heddle loom. If you find yourself with any other questions, please feel free to contact me through my website, www.djehandwovens.com. Thank you and happy weaving.